From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning, security gang. Great to be back in the studio and great to be with all y'all this Monday morning, November 25th, 2024. A short week, obviously, because of the Thanksgiving holiday here, but really exciting times in cybersecurity. Really a lot of stuff happening, and it's kind of showing you the progression and maturity of an industry, yet the need to really create a specific standard to address these challenges will remain a challenge for anyone tuning in. Thank you all again for tuning in. We have a tradition here. If it's your first time tuning in on the CyberHub Podcast, before we get started in the show, I join all y'all for a coffee cup cheers. I've got my double espresso this morning. Whatever you're drinking, put it in the comments to let me know. I know some people drink coffee, some drink tea, some have other drinks that I've never heard of maybe. So coffee cup cheers. Let's go ahead and get started with the Palo Alto news. We started talking about this last week with the Palo Alto 0-day on their firewall. Well, over the weekend, a kind of hissy fight broke up between Shadow Server and Palo Alto. So Shadow Server, a nonprofit that shares daily analysis of more than 200 national computer security incident response teams, typically scans for devices exposed to the internet and potentially vulnerable to known exploits. Yet in this specific case, Shadow Server research and collaboration with the Saudi National Cybersecurity Authority identified artifacts left behind by attackers, which can be detected remotely, according to Piotr Kijewski, the Shadow Server CEO. The research is a partial rebuttal to Palo Alto's assertion that only a limited number of customers' firewall management interfaces were exploited by the two CVEs. However, the ecosystem shows that nearly 2,000 devices may have been potentially exploited due to these 0 days. The security vendor first published a advisory on unconfirmed vulnerability in the PAN OS on November 8th. By the 14th, their company observed threat activity targeting the vulnerability. There were IOCs on the 15th and a patch late last week. On Monday, a CVE was assigned to the critical authentication bypass that CVE 2024-0012, and Palo Alto Network issued a patch for that. CISO added it to its KEV catalog with the other vulnerability, CVE 2024-90474. That's another vulnerability. Both exploited in tandem create that 0-day. Palo Alto Threat Intelligence Unit 42 is tracking the initial exploitation in Operation Lunar Peak. They're actively working with those who may be impacted and are committed to supporting the security of our customers, according to Palo Alto. So we'll see how this breaks down, but I'm going to stick with Shadow Server here. And the reason I say that, not just because they're a nonprofit, it's because they're rarely wrong when they go out on a limb like this, because their credibility as a nonprofit is paramount to anything else they say. And while Palo Alto may be denying it, Palo Alto needs to actually show the facts behind it. That kind of shows you the challenge behind firewalls, right? So we need firewalls. We can't eliminate firewalls, yet firewalls also introduce a risk, and patching them is also very, very significant, because you're talking about downtime, doing it overnight. You're talking about potentially cutting off access to the business. While you do it, you don't know the full impact if the patch would break anything else down your cycle, and it does create a challenge. And that challenge, folks, is something that many practitioners face when it comes to vulnerability management and patch management. And that's why, at the end of the day, that's the most difficult part of practicing cybersecurity, is vulnerability and patch management. And the victims are not to blame. The firewall companies are really also not to blame. The job is difficult. It's a big task at hand, and it requires collaboration and cooperation. However, in this case, my money's on Shadow Server being correct, not Palo Alto. We'll move on to a nearest neighbor type of attack. Now, I just want to preface by saying this is some really crazy stuff, and it's likely not going to happen to anyone you know unless someone really wants to do this. According to Velocity, APT-28, also known as Fancy Bear, associated with the Russian GRU, was able to hack an enterprise Wi-Fi network while being 1,000 miles away by leveraging a noble technique called the nearest neighbor attack. Now, this is a very, very complex attack method. That's why it's not very common. But in this case, this was discovered in February 4th of 2022 when Velocity detected a server compromise at a customer site in Washington, D.C. that was doing Ukrainian-related work. APT, being part of the GRU, has been conducting cyber operations since at least 2004. The attackers first obtained the credentials to a target enterprise Wi-Fi network through a password spraying attack targeting a victim's public-facing service. However, due to MFA, it prevented the use of credentials over the public web. So here's where MFA actually did what it was supposed to do. It stopped a straightforward attack from a password spraying. So password spraying, compromised passwords, go to log in, MFA eliminates the ability to do that. Now you've got to go back and think of another way to do this. So they came up with a creative way and started looking at organizations in buildings nearby that could serve as a pivot to target the wireless network of the victim. The idea was to compromise another organization and look on its network for dual home devices, which have both a wired and wireless connection like laptops or routers that would allow the attackers to use a wireless adapter and connect to the target enterprise Wi-Fi using the username and password. APT-28 compromised multiple organizations as part of this attack. They were daisy chaining their connections using valid access credentials. They found a device within the proper range, and they used that to connect to 3 wireless access points near the windows of a victim's conference room. Again, rare that this happens. Cool. The story is super, super cool. An attack method that's really, really fascinating, showing you, but nothing beyond a motivated attacker to get to you. They used RDP from an unprivileged account. They were able to move laterally across the target network, searching for systems of interest and exfiltrating data. They also used the servetask.bat to dump window registry Hive. They're compressing them all into zip archives for exfil. They relied on native window tools. That way they kept their footprint to a minimum while they were collecting the data. Multiple complexities in the investigation prevented Velocity from attributing the attack to any known threat actor, although the IOCs point to Russia. Based on the details, it's very likely that it was Fancy Bear that was able to escalate privileges before running critical payloads by exploiting a zero-day. The CVE was 2022-38028, a vulnerability in the Windows print spooler service within the victim network. So essentially what they did is they jumped from one network to the other network. They essentially probably used Google Maps, if you can imagine. They looked at where the office is of the company they're trying to attack. Then they started looking at companies nearby that may be able to pick up the Wi-Fi signal, started chain daising those together until they were able to access one company's network that was able to give them the Wi-Fi network they were looking for. When they did, they got into that Wi-Fi network. They moved laterally. And again, how often do you have observation on your Wi-Fi? You don't often, right? You have a guest Wi-Fi network, you have a corporate Wi-Fi network, and that introduces new risks. Now, should we all rush to take care of this? Not really, but still letting you know the kind of motivated attackers that are out there when it comes to nation state capabilities. A China-linked state-sponsored threat actor has been targeting Linux systems with a previously unknown malware strains in a new espionage campaign. The group is tracked as Galicium. It's been active since at least 2014. It's primarily targeting East Asia and the Middle East. Its latest campaign focused on Taiwan, the Philippines, and Singapore. They deployed Linux backdoors named Wolfbane and Firewood. According to ESET, this is the first time that Galicium targeted Linux systems. The first malware samples were uploaded to VirusTotal back in 2023. To gain initial access, they exploited an unknown web application vulnerability that did not provide much detail about the impact of the attack or the identities of the victims, letting you know the sensitivity behind this specific attack. Wolfbane for itself is a Linux equivalent of Galicium's backdoor for Windows named Gelservine. Firewood, on the other hand, is similar to a backdoor named Project Wood, which was previously used against Windows system. The goal of the backdoors, along with other tools, is cyber espionage. They're designed to target sensitive data, such as system information, user credential, and specific files and directories, all while evading detection. So again, you see that there. UK-based vehicle tracking solution provider Microlise confirmed last week that data was stolen from its system during an October cyber attack. The attack was disclosed on October 31st. The incident resulted in large portions of the network being disrupted, while impacted tracking systems and panic alarms in the prison vans and courier vehicles of at least 2 operators, namely DHL and Serco. 1 week later, the company said it was already bringing some of the affected services online. Last week, they notified the London Stock Exchange that the restoration process was essentially complete, confirming the theft of data from their systems. The company said it also notified international authorities that corporate data was stolen from its headquarters without providing further details on the matter. Microlise's updated notice to the London Stock Exchange says the SafePay ransomware group listed the company on its Tor-based leak site, claiming the theft of 1.2 terabytes worth of data. Again, those numbers are often exaggerated. They'll duplicate some of the data and so forth. They don't really go through the data. They just dump it, put it on there, and whoever wants to buy it will be the one to get it. A design flaw in Fortinet's VPN server login mechanism can be leveraged to conceal successful verification of credentials during brute force attack without tipping off defenders of compromised login. Although the brute force attack is still visible, a new technique allows login only failed attempts and not successful one, granting a false sense of security. The FortiClient VPN stores login activity using a two-step process that consists of authentication and authorization stage. Researchers over at virtual pen testing company, automated pen testing company Pantera, discovered the successful login is recorded only if the process passes both the authentication and authorization steps. Otherwise, it will only log a failed authentication. So essentially giving you like, oh, no one's really trying to access it, but they really, really are. They noticed the responses, and obviously I'll put these on our Substack at jamesazar.substack.com. You can see everything there. However, if the process is stopped after authentication, the VPN servers only logs the failed attempts, not the successful one, since it didn't continue with the authorization step. The failed authentication attempts will tip off a Fortinet admin that their device is under a brute force attack and allow them to potentially block the attempts. However, they will not know if the attacker was able to successfully verify credentials. So that kind of gives you a false sense of security. We know it, but we don't know if they actually got the credentials through. So again, that's part of that. Fortinet has yet to comment on this issue after this story became available. Again, go check out our Substack, jamesazar.substack.com. You can get a free written and the audio podcast of the show there, as well as all the takeaways from the show. Microsoft on Thursday put a stop to the Onyx phishing service and made public the name of the Egyptian man who is running it. The name of the man is Abanoob Nadi, aka MRX Coder. He's been developing and selling phishing kits under the Onyx brand. Nadi was unmasked by the dark monitoring platform Dark Atlas back in July of this year. Having his identity exposed by a major company like Microsoft is likely to have a bigger impact. Microsoft has been tracking cybercrime operations linked to Nadi since at least 2017. The company says he's been involved in the development and sale of several phishing services, including Onyx, Caffeine, and more recently, Furor. The phishing kits offered through a phishing as a service model for prices starting at $150 per month enable users to create and send out phishing emails in large-scale campaigns. The Onyx operation also fueled adversary-in-the-middle phishing, where attackers intercepted authentication between users and legitimate services. Microsoft said it seized 240 domains associated with the service run by Nadi, significantly disrupting the cybercrime operation. However, Nadi's not been arrested, and so you can imagine that he'll just keep doing what he does. Thai police arrested a Chinese man driving around Bangkok with an SMS blaster device, spamming over 100,000 SMS phishing texts an hour to people living in the city of Bangkok. The device, which reportedly has a range of around 3 kilometers or 10,000 feet, could send out messages at a rate of 100,000 every hour. Over 3 days, the scammer sent almost 1 million SMS text messages to mobile devices in the range that stated your 9,268 points are about to expire. Hurry up and redeem your gift now. And if you're listening, you can't see a picture of the device in the back of the van, but you can see Thai authorities, and it almost looks like a Ocean's 11 type of thing there. There's also a video you can find in the show notes. The text messages continue to link to a phishing website that contained the string AIS Thailand, impersonating Advanced Info Services, Thailand's largest mobile phone operator. Users who clicked the URL were taken to a page requesting their credit card information, which is then sent back to the scammers to perform unauthorized transactions in other country. The fraud gang, some of its members located in Thailand and other abroad, coordinated through private Telegram channels where the content of the SMS was decided. They captured a 35-year-old Chinese man who was driving the vehicle containing the SMS blaster, and the police are looking for at least 2 more members of that gang. The North Korean fake IT scam isn't just a Western problem. It seems to also be one in China and Russia, as well as Australia, US, UK, and so much more. The North Korean, they're obviously trying to bypass all the financial sanctions that exist on the country, and as such are using their fake IT worker scam to essentially many additional countries as well. So just kind of showing you that this threat is not local but global one, and one that needs to be addressed. Again, something to keep in mind. And finally, if you're flying this holiday, you go to the airport, TSA is using a lot of facial recognition now, a lot of it. And a bipartisan group of 12 senators on Wednesday called on DHS Inspector General, expressing alarm over the widespread use of facial recognition technology without any audit of privacy protections or any third-party assessment of the accuracy of the technology. The TSA said, which will soon roll out the technology in small and mid-sized airports, taking the total number of airports where facial recognition occurs to 430 nationwide. The senators question whether facial recognition is necessary at all, since TSA already uses devices known as Cat 1 scanners, which don't take images of faces to determine if the passenger's identification is fake. The letter was signed by Jeff Merkley, John Kennedy, Ed Markey, Ted Cruz, Roger Marshall, Steve Daines, Ron Wyden, Elizabeth Warren, Chris Van Hollen, Cynthia Loomis, Bernie Sanders, and Peter Walsh. So all in all, they want some answers, and I think we should all get them. That's it for our show this morning. We'll be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern, live with all the latest and greatest. So this week, show today, tomorrow, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Thursday will be off, obviously, for Thanksgiving holiday. And then we'll be back on Monday with a whole lot more. Until then, have a great week. Have a great rest of your day. And most importantly, y'all, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.